The Marine's crutches flew across the diner floor as his body slammed into the linoleum. Two rich kids in designer clothes stood over him, filming, laughing at the twisted prosthetic leg beneath him. Then the nurse in blue scrubs stepped forward. 8 seconds later, one kid was screaming with a dislocated shoulder. The other was on his knees, crying. She never threw a single punch. What the security cameras captured that morning would pack a courtroom with 52 Marines in dress blues and expose 19 years of corruption that had poisoned an entire town. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments which city you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. Now let the story begin. The sound came first. Not the crash itself, but that split second of violent silence when an entire room holds its breath because something terrible is about to happen. Then Marcus Cole hit the floor. His body struck the linoleum with a force that shouldn't happen to someone just trying to get lunch. The impact was awkward, twisted, the kind of fall that happens when you can't catch yourself because your hands are gripping crutches that are now skittering across the floor like they're trying to escape. One crutch spun under a booth. The other stopped at the feet of an elderly woman who'd been reading the newspaper 30 seconds earlier. The metallic sound of his prosthetic leg against the tile cut through that diner like a gunshot. Everything stopped. 43 people in that room. Coffee cups frozen halfway to mouths. A waitress standing paralyzed with a pot in one hand. The cook visible through the kitchen window, spatula suspended in midair. Not one of them moved. Marcus lay there face down, one cheek pressed against cold floor that smelled like decades of grease and pine sol. His prosthetic leg had twisted at an unnatural angle during the fall. Not broken because metal and carbon fiber don't break like bone, but displaced in a way that made it clear this man had already given enough. Above him stood two young men. Tyler Morrison had his hand still extended from the shove. His twin brother Derek stood beside him, phone out recording. They weren't helping. They were laughing. You get that?" Tyler asked his brother. "Every second, bro. This is gold." Marcus's fingers curled against the linoleum. His jaw tightened, but he didn't say anything. Just started the slow, humiliating process of trying to get up without his crutches. That's when Elena Reyes stood up from her booth. She didn't stand dramatically. There was no theatrical moment of decision. She was simply on her feet. Blue scrubs wrinkled from a 14-hour shift that had ended 20 minutes ago, and she was already walking toward Marcus before her conscious mind had fully processed what she was doing. Her breakfast sat abandoned on the table behind her. Eggs getting cold. Coffee still steaming. She didn't look at it. Elena had been an ICU nurse for 4 years. Before that, she'd been a Navy hospital corpsman for 6. 2 combat deployments, 1 Purple Heart, 1 Silver Star she never talked about. Under her scrub top, resting against her sternum, hung a set of dog tags that didn't belong to her. They'd belonged to her brother, Daniel. He'd died in Fallujah 11 years ago. She'd been 19 years old, just enlisted when she got the call that changed everything. Elena had worn his tags every single day since. She reached Marcus in 4 steps, dropped to one knee beside him, and her hand went immediately to his shoulder. Not grabbing. Assessing. "Are you hurt?" Her voice was quiet. Professional. The voice she used with patience when the situation was bad, but panic wouldn't help. Marcus turned his head, looked up at her. Their eyes met. He shook his head slightly. "Not hurt. Just..." He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Elena's hand stayed on his shoulder for 1 more second. A gesture that said, "You're not alone." Then she stood. And when she rose and turned toward Tyler and Derek Morrison, something had changed in her posture. Tyler was still laughing. He nudged his brother. "Look at this. Now his girlfriend's gonna defend him." "I'm not his girlfriend," Elena said. Her voice cut through the diner like a scalpel. Tyler blinked, surprised that someone was speaking to him that way. He looked at Elena, really looked at her for the first time. Tired woman in scrubs, maybe 5'6", 130, dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Nobody important. "Then mind your business, sweetheart." Elena didn't move. "Apologize to him." Derek lowered his phone slightly, still recording. "Excuse me. You pushed a disabled veteran to the ground. Apologize. Now." Tyler's smirk widened. He took a step closer to Elena, using his height to intimidate. 190 pounds, 20 years old, had never been told no by anyone who mattered. Or what? Elena didn't step back, didn't flinch. "You don't want to find out." Tyler laughed and turned to his brother. "You hearing this? She's threatening me." "I'm asking you," Elena said, her voice steady, "to do the right thing. You knocked down a man who lost his leg serving this country. The least you can do is help him up and apologize." "The least I can do," Tyler repeated, mocking her tone. He leaned in closer. "Lady, do you know who my father is? I don't care who your father is." "You should." "Richard Morrison. City Council. Half the commercial real estate in this county. So why don't you take your little nurse outfit and go back to emptying bedpans and let the grown-ups handle this?" Behind Elena, Marcus had managed to retrieve one crutch. He was pulling himself up against a booth, his prosthetic leg still twisted wrong. "Just leave it," Marcus said quietly. "It's not worth it." Elena didn't turn around. "It's worth it to me." Derek stepped closer now, flanking his brother, both of them boxing Elena in. "You know what I think," Derek said. "I think you like playing hero. Probably makes you feel important. But here's the thing, sweetheart. Nobody here is going to help you. Look around." Elena didn't look. She didn't need to. She already knew. 43 people in that diner. Businessmen in suits. Families with children. A group of construction workers on their lunch break. An elderly couple in a corner booth. Every single one of them was looking away. Derek grinned. "See, nobody cares? So why don't you just—" His hand shot out and grabbed Elena's left wrist. Hard. Hard enough to leave marks. "Walk away before you get hurt." Elena's response was immediate. Her right hand came up, trapped Derek's hand against her own wrist, locking it in place. Before his brain could register what was happening, she rotated her forearm outward, breaking the mechanical advantage of his grip. His fingers were strong, but the angle was wrong now. She stepped back with her left foot, created distance, pulled him slightly off balance. Then she twisted. A wrist lock executed so cleanly, so precisely that Derek didn't even have time to resist. His body followed his wrist because that's what bodies do when joints are forced past their natural range. His hand opened involuntarily. He gasped. And suddenly Derek Morrison was on his knees, his arm extended, his wrist bent at an angle that sent lightning bolts of pain up his forearm, controlled completely by a woman who weighed 60 pounds less than him. "What the hell?" Derek screamed. Elena maintained the pressure, not increasing it, just holding. Clinical. Controlled. "I asked nicely," she said. "You should have listened." Tyler saw his brother go down and reacted on instinct. Not smart instinct. The instinct of someone who'd never faced a consequence in his life. He charged. Came at Elena from her right side while she was still controlling Derek, thinking he could tackle her, overwhelm her with size and momentum. It was the worst decision Tyler Morrison had ever made. Elena saw him coming in her peripheral vision. She released Derek's wrist. He crumpled forward, gasping, cradling his arm. And Elena pivoted, smooth, efficient, military. She didn't move away from Tyler's charge. She moved into it. Her left hand caught his right arm at the wrist. Her right hand shot up and cupped the back of his elbow, controlling the joint. In the same motion, she stepped to the side, redirected his momentum past her, and rotated his arm upward and back. Tyler's body followed because physics doesn't care about money or influence. His shoulder joint reached the end of its natural range of motion. Elena applied pressure. Precise. Controlled. The humeral head of his shoulder displaced from the socket with a sensation Tyler would later describe to the emergency room doctor as feeling like something tearing loose inside him. A clean anterior shoulder dislocation. Tyler's scream filled the diner, high-pitched, primal. The sound of someone experiencing pain they'd never imagined existed. Elena maintained her grip for exactly 1 second longer, long enough to guide Tyler to his knees, long enough to ensure he wasn't getting back up. Then she released him. He collapsed forward, his right arm hanging at an unnatural angle. Tears and snot mixing on his face as his brain tried to process trauma it had no reference for. Elena stepped back, positioned herself between both brothers and Marcus. She wasn't even breathing hard. The entire fight had lasted 8 seconds. The diner was absolutely silent. Marcus, now standing with both crutches, stared at Elena with an expression that transcended gratitude. It was recognition. The kind that happens when one warrior sees another. He knew those movements, knew that discipline, knew what it took to execute that cleanly under pressure. "Navy?" he asked quietly. Elena met his eyes. "Corpsman. FMF. Fleet Marine Force." That meant she'd been attached to Marine units. That meant she'd been in combat. That meant she understood things that couldn't be explained to civilians. Marcus nodded slowly. "Semper Fi, Doc." Elena almost smiled. "Semper Fi." The waitress, a woman in her 50s named Linda, who'd worked at this diner for 16 years, was the first person to move. She stepped out from behind the counter, hand shaking, and approached the group. "I called 911, she said. "Police are on their way." "Thank you," Elena said. Tyler was still on the floor, whimpering, cradling his dislocated shoulder. Derek had managed to get to his feet, his wrist already swelling his face, a mask of shock and humiliation. "You're dead," Derek spat at Elena. "You hear me? You're finished. Our father is going to destroy you." Elena looked at him, calm, unafraid. "Your father should have taught you not to put your hands on people." The police arrived in 7 minutes. 2 patrol cars' lights flashing, pulling into the parking lot, while Tyler was still on the floor making sounds that didn't qualify as words. Officer Delgado came through the door first, followed by his partner, Officer Chen. Both of them scanning the scene with practiced eyes. One young man on the floor clutching his shoulder, another cradling his wrist. A woman in scrubs standing calmly near a disabled veteran. Delgado had been working this district for 9 years. He'd seen every variation of human stupidity that exists. This didn't look like any of them. "What happened here?" The waitress, Linda, spoke first. She pointed at Tyler and Derek. "Those 2 pushed that Marine to the ground. She was defending him." An elderly man in a corner booth shook his head. "I saw her attack them. They were just talking and she went crazy." A construction worker stood up. "That's bull. The kid started it. I saw the whole thing." Another customer, younger in a business suit, had his phone out. I recorded part of it. You want to see each person describing the same 8 seconds through completely different lenses. Delgado sighed internally. This was going to be complicated. Officer Chen was kneeling next to Tyler, calling for an ambulance, trying to assess the injury. Tyler was screaming about assault charges and lawsuits. "Do you have any idea who my father is?" Tyler kept shouting. "Do you have any idea what he's going to do to all of you?" Delgado approached Elena. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to explain what happened here." Elena's voice was steady, factual. "Those 2 men assaulted the veteran behind me, pushed him to the ground. I intervened to protect him. One of them grabbed my wrist." She held up her left arm where red marks were already visible. "I defended myself." Delgado wrote it down, looked at Marcus. "Sir, is that accurate?" Marcus nodded. "Completely. She was helping me. She didn't start anything." That's when the 3rd vehicle arrived. Not a patrol car. A black Mercedes S-Class that cost more than Officer Delgado made in 3 years. The man who stepped out was wearing a suit that had been tailored specifically for his body. Probably in Milan. Definitely more expensive than most people's monthly mortgage. Richard Morrison. Attorney. Real estate developer. City council member. The kind of man whose name appeared in the business section and the society pages with equal frequency. He walked into that diner like he owned it, like he owned everything. His eyes found his sons, assessed their conditions, and his expression didn't soften with concern. It hardened with calculation. He didn't speak to his sons. He spoke to Delgado. "Officer, Richard Morrison. These are my sons. They were assaulted by that woman." He pointed at Elena without looking at her. "I want her arrested immediately." Delgado shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Morrison, we're still gathering statements. It appears your sons initiated the—" Morrison cut him off. "I don't care what it appears." His voice was cold, controlled, the voice of a man who'd never been told no. "My son has a dislocated shoulder. The other has a sprained wrist. That woman attacked them. Multiple witnesses will confirm this. Sir, we have conflicting statements. We have video evidence that suggests—" Morrison stepped closer to Delgado, close enough that only the officer could hear him. "I know the mayor personally. I play golf with the police chief every Sunday. The district attorney owes me 3 favors, and your performance review is coming up in 2 months. He paused. Let that sink in. "Arrest her, now, or I will make sure you spend the rest of your career writing parking tickets in the worst part of town." Delgado's face went pale. He had a wife, 2 kids, a mortgage, a pension that was 12 years away from vesting. He'd been a good cop for 9 years, but good cops still had to live in the world as it existed. He turned to Elena. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to turn around and place your hands behind your back." Elena's eyes widened. "What? You're under arrest for assault and battery." Marcus's voice cut through the diner. "This is insane. She was protecting me. They attacked me. You're arresting the wrong person." Delgado wouldn't meet his eyes. "Sir, please step back. Look at the video. Look at my leg. They pushed me down because they thought it was funny. Sir, I need you to step back." Elena didn't argue, didn't protest. She simply turned around, hands coming together at the small of her back. The handcuffs clicked into place, cold metal against her wrists. Delgado recited her rights, his voice mechanical hollow. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney." Elena's eyes found Marcus as Delgado led her toward the door. Marcus was standing with his crutches, his face a mixture of disbelief and rage. "This isn't over," he said to her. "You hear me? This isn't over. I'm going to fight this. I'm going to tell everyone what really happened." Elena nodded slightly. "Take care of yourself, Marine. What's your name?" "Elena Reyes. I'm Marcus Cole, and I swear to God I'm going to make this right." Richard Morrison watched Elena being led away, a small, satisfied smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He turned to his sons. Tyler was being loaded onto a stretcher by paramedics. Derek was getting his wrist examined. "Both of you," Morrison said quietly. "Shut your mouths. Don't say anything to anyone. I'll have lawyers at the hospital within the hour." Derek looked at his father. "Dad, I said shut your mouth!" Morrison's voice was ice. "You've embarrassed me enough for one day. From now on, you say nothing. You remember nothing. The lawyers will handle everything else." He straightened his tie and walked out of the diner, already on his phone. "Thomas, it's Richard. I need Morrison and Associates on something. Full court press. A nurse just assaulted my boys. I want her destroyed." Marcus Cole stood in that diner for a long time after everyone else had left. The police had taken their statements. The ambulance had taken Tyler. The other customers had scattered like roaches when the lights come on. Only Linda the waitress remained sweeping up broken pieces of a coffee cup that had shattered during the chaos. "You okay, hon?" she asked Marcus. Marcus wasn't okay. He was shaking with a rage he hadn't felt since Afghanistan. Elena Reyes had stood up for him when no one else would. She'd put herself between him and those two pieces of garbage. She'd defended him. And now she was in handcuffs because of it. Because some rich man's sons thought it was funny to push a disabled veteran to the ground. Because money talked louder than truth. Because the system was broken in ways that made Marcus want to scream. He looked down at his prosthetic leg. The leg he'd lost to an IED in Kandahar province. The leg he'd sacrificed for a country that was supposed to be better than this. "No," he said to Linda. "I'm not okay." He pulled out his phone, scrolled through his contacts until he found a number he hadn't called in 2 years. Gunnery Sergeant Michael Torres, retired, running a construction business in Arizona. The best man Marcus had ever served with. The phone rang 3 times. "This is Torres." "Gunny, it's Corporal Hayes." Marcus caught himself. "Cole. Marcus Cole. Sorry. Old habits." A pause. Then Torres's voice warmed. "Marcus. Been a while, brother. Everything okay?" Marcus looked at the door Elena had been led through. "No, Gunny. Everything is not okay. I need help. There's a Navy corpsman who just got arrested for protecting me from some rich kids who thought pushing a disabled vet was entertainment. The father's connected. Police, politicians, the whole town." Torres was quiet for a moment. "Tell me everything." So Marcus did. He told Torres about the diner, about the Morrison twins, about Elena stepping in when 43 people looked away, about the 8 seconds that left Tyler screaming on the floor, about the handcuffs, about Richard Morrison's threats. When he finished, Torres was silent for a long moment. Then he said 5 words that would change everything. "Send me the details. Now, duh." The Marine Veteran Network isn't official. It doesn't have headquarters or membership lists or any formal structure. But it exists, threading through every city and town in America, like a nervous system that activates when one of its own is in trouble. Torres made 6 calls that night. Each of those Marines made 4 more. By midnight, Elena's story had reached veteran groups in 12 states. By dawn, it was in 23. The details spread through social media groups, through VFW halls, through informal networks of men and women who'd served and remembered what it meant when someone had your back. Most of them had never met Elena. None of them needed to. The story was enough. A Navy corpsman arrested for defending a disabled Marine. The narrative cut through political affiliations, through disagreements about policy, through all the things that usually divide people. This was simple. This was clear. This was a sister who needed help. Elena spent that night in a holding cell. Concrete walls, metal toilet, a thin mattress on a metal bunk that might have been comfortable if you'd never slept on anything else. She'd slept on worse. In Ramadi, she'd slept in a hole she'd dug herself under a poncho, listening to gunfire that never seemed to stop. In Helmand, she'd slept sitting up against a wall rifle across her lap, because lying down meant you might not wake up fast enough. This was nothing. But it was also everything. She was a nurse. She saved lives. She'd dedicated her entire career, both military and civilian, to helping people. And now she was in a cage because she'd refused to let a wounded Marine be humiliated without consequence. Elena touched the dog tags under her scrub top. Daniel's dog tags. Her brother had been 22 when he died. An IED in Fallujah. They told her it was quick. She'd never believed them. She'd joined the Navy 2 months later. Became a corpsman, because that's what Daniel had been. Earned her FMF pin, because she wanted to be with Marines like Daniel had been. And in 2 deployments in firefights and mortar attacks and IED explosions, she'd kept her promise. She'd saved Marines. She'd brought them home. Even when she couldn't save Daniel, she'd saved others. And now she was facing assault charges for doing exactly what she'd been trained to do, protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The next morning, Elena was brought before a judge for arraignment. She wore the same blue scrubs she'd been arrested in. No one had offered her a change of clothes. No one had offered her much of anything. The judge, a tired-looking man in his 60s, read the charges without looking at her. Assault and battery, 2 counts. How does the defendant plead Elena's public defender? A young man named Marcus Chen, who looked like he hadn't slept in days, leaned over to whisper to her. Plead not guilty. We'll sort out the rest later. Not guilty, Your Honor. The judge nodded, made a note. Bail is set at $15,000. Elena felt her stomach drop. $15,000. She had maybe $4,000 in savings. She'd spent the last 3 years paying off her brother's medical bills from the VA, helping her mother with expenses after her father's death, sending money to her sister, who was struggling as a single mom. $15,000 might as well have been $15 million. Can the defendant post bail? The judge asked. Chen looked at Elena. She shook her head slightly. Not at this time, Your Honor. The judge was already moving on to the next case. The defendant will be remanded to county custody until such time as, Your Honor, a voice from the back of the courtroom. Everyone turned. Marcus Cole stood in the aisle, balanced on his crutches, a cashier's check in his hand. I'll post her bail. The judge raised an eyebrow. And you are Marcus Cole, United States Marine Corps retired, the veteran she was protecting when she got arrested. Murmurs rippled through the small courtroom. The judge looked at the prosecutor. The prosecutor looked at Richard Morrison, who was sitting in the front row. Morrison's face was a mask of controlled fury. The defendant is a flight risk, Your Honor, the prosecutor said quickly. She has military training. The charges are serious. We request that bail be denied. Chen was on his feet. Your Honor, my client has deep roots in this community. She's worked at County General Hospital for 4 years. She has no criminal record. There's no evidence she's a flight risk. The judge looked at Marcus. You have $15,000, sir. Marcus nodded. I emptied my savings, borrowed against my VA disability back pay. It's all there. The judge was quiet for a moment. Then he looked at Richard Morrison. Then he looked at Elena. Something shifted in his expression. Maybe conscience. Maybe calculation. Maybe just exhaustion with a system that too often bent toward money instead of justice. Bail is posted. The defendant is released into her own recognizance pending trial. Next case. Elena walked out of that courtroom in a daze. Marcus was waiting for her on the front steps, leaning on his crutches, the morning sun turning his face into a study of light and shadow. You didn't have to do that, she said. Yeah, Marcus said. I did. I don't even know you. You stood between me and those two jackasses when 43 people looked the other way. That's all I needed to know. Elena didn't have words. Couldn't find them. She'd spent 6 years in the military, 4 years as a nurse. She'd saved lives, held dying men in her arms, made impossible decisions in impossible moments. But standing there in the morning light, free, because a stranger had emptied his savings for her, she didn't know what to say. Thank you, she finally managed. Marcus shook his head. Don't thank me yet. Richard Morrison is coming for you with everything he's got. His lawyers are going to try to bury you. The prosecutor is in his pocket. Half the cops in this town owe him favors. So what do we do? Marcus looked at her, and for the first time since the diner, he smiled. We fight back, and we don't fight alone. He pulled out his phone, showed her the screen. Hundreds of messages, emails, social media notifications. What is this? Elena asked. Marines, veterans, from all over the country. They know what happened. They know who you are. And they're not going to let Richard Morrison win. Elena stared at the phone. Message after message. Where do I send money for her defense? Semper Fi from Phoenix. Navy vet here. Tell the doc she's not alone. Iraq, 2007. Corpsman saved my life. Tell me what you need. Elena looked up at Marcus. I don't understand. They don't even know me. Marcus's smile widened. They don't have to. You're one of us. And Marines don't leave Marines behind. He offered her his hand. Elena took it. And somewhere in the depths of her exhausted, overwhelmed heart, something sparked. Something that felt like hope. The next 2 weeks were a blur. Elena was placed on unpaid administrative leave from the hospital. HR was apologetic professional and completely inflexible. Policy, they said. Liability, they said. She understood. Hated it, but understood. Marcus Chen, her public defender, was overwhelmed. 63 active cases, 17 minutes per client on a good day. He was doing his best, but his best was spread impossibly thin. Meanwhile, Richard Morrison's legal team, Morrison and Associates, was billing $800 an hour. 3 lawyers, 2 paralegals, an investigator. An entire machine built for one purpose, destroying Elena Reyes. They filed motions, subpoenaed witnesses, hired medical experts to testify about the severity of Tyler's injuries. They leaked stories to the local paper. Elena's military record was suddenly under scrutiny. Anonymous sources questioned her mental stability, her propensity for violence. And Elena watched it happen, like watching a car accident in slow motion. She couldn't afford a real lawyer, could barely afford groceries. She was drowning. And then on the 14th day, Marcus Cole called. "Pack a bag," he said. "We're going to the VA." Why? Because someone wants to meet you. Someone who's going to change everything. The VA hospital was 40 minutes away. Marcus drove his prosthetic leg, working the pedals with practiced ease. Elena sat in the passenger seat, watching the countryside scroll past, wondering what fresh hell awaited her. She was tired. Bone-deep tired. The kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. They pulled into the VA parking lot, and Marcus led her inside through corridors that smelled like antiseptic and resignation until they reached a small conference room on the 3rd floor. Inside, sitting at a table covered with papers, was a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and eyes that looked like they'd seen everything twice. "Elena Reyes," the woman said. "I'm Patricia Hawkins, Vietnam era, Army Nurse Corps, retired colonel, and I'm going to be your lawyer." Elena blinked. "I can't afford... I'm not charging you. None of us are." "Us." Patricia smiled and gestured to the papers on the table. 7 military lawyers, pro bono, 15 character witnesses including a Medal of Honor recipient who served with your brother in Fallujah, an investigative journalist who's been trying to expose Richard Morrison's corruption for 6 years, and as of this morning, a forensic accountant who's found some very interesting irregularities in Morrison's real estate dealings. Elena sat down heavily. This couldn't be real. "Why?" she asked. "Why are you doing this?" Patricia leaned forward. "Because 35 years ago, I was you. Young woman in uniform. Did my job. Got railroaded by someone with money and power. Nobody helped me. I spent 6 years digging myself out of a hole I didn't deserve to be in." She reached across the table and took Elena's hand. "I swore that if I ever had the chance to help someone in my situation, I would. And here you are." Elena felt tears building behind her eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Say you're ready to fight. Because Richard Morrison thinks he can crush you. He thinks money and power are the only things that matter. He's about to learn that there's something stronger." "What's that?" Patricia smiled. "Family. The kind you choose. The kind that chooses you. The kind that shows up in a courtroom in dress blues because one of their own needs them." She slid a folder across the table. "Now, let's talk about how we're going to destroy Richard Morrison's entire case." Elena opened the folder. Inside were documents, photographs, witness statements, and a piece of paper with a single sentence typed on it. "Richard Morrison has been bribing officials in this county for 19 years. Here's the proof." Elena looked up at Patricia. "Where did you get this? The forensic accountant, the investigative journalist, and a very angry former employee of Morrison and Associates who got fired last year and decided he didn't owe Richard Morrison his silence anymore." Elena's hands were shaking. This was real. This was actually happening. "So what's the plan?" she asked. Patricia's smile was sharp, predatory, the smile of someone who'd been waiting a very long time for exactly this moment. "The plan is simple. We don't just win your case. We burn Richard Morrison's empire to the ground." She stood up. "Trial starts in 3 weeks, and when it's over, the Morrison family is going to wish they'd never heard the name Elena Reyes." 3 weeks, 21 days. Elena had 21 days to prepare for the fight of her life. She had a team now. Lawyers who believed in her. Witnesses who would tell the truth. Evidence that would expose Richard Morrison for what he really was. But as she left the VA that afternoon, walking beside Marcus Cole, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Something neither of them was prepared for. Richard Morrison had spent 19 years building his empire. He wasn't going to let a nurse and a disabled veteran tear it down without a fight. And the fight that was coming would be unlike anything Elena had ever faced, even in war. The first attack came 3 days after Elena met Patricia Hawkins. She was walking to her car after a meeting with the legal team when a black SUV pulled up beside her. The window rolled down. A man in an expensive suit looked out at her with the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. "Ms. Reyes, Thomas Whitfield, Morrison and Associates." Elena kept walking. "We should talk," Whitfield said, the SUV crawling alongside her. "My client is prepared to make this all go away. Charges dropped. Record expunged. Even a settlement for your trouble." Elena stopped. Turned. "How much?" Whitfield's smile widened. $200,000. Tax-free. All you have to do is sign a statement saying you overreacted, that you regret your actions, that the Morrison boys were just being playful, and you misread the situation. Playful? Young men. High spirits. You know how it is. Elena walked to the SUV window, leaned in close enough that Whitfield pulled back slightly. "Your clients pushed a disabled Marine to the ground because they thought it was funny. One of them grabbed me hard enough to leave bruises, and you want me to say they were being playful? I want you to be practical, Ms. Reyes. You can't win this. Richard Morrison has resources you can't imagine. He has connections you can't fight. Take the money. Walk away. Live your life." Elena smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Tell your client something for me. Tell him I've faced Taliban fighters with AK-47s. I've performed surgery while mortars were landing 50 feet away. I've held Marines together with my bare hands while medevacs were 20 minutes out." She leaned closer. "Richard Morrison doesn't scare me, and neither do you." She stepped back. "See you in court, Mr. Whitfield." The SUV sat there for a moment. Then the window rolled up and it drove away. Elena's hands were shaking as she got into her car. But not from fear, from anger. If you're standing with Elena, hit that subscribe button. She's going to need all the support she can get. The next morning, Patricia called an emergency meeting. Elena arrived at the VA conference room to find the entire legal team assembled, their faces grim. Marcus was there too, leaning on his crutches in the corner, his jaw tight. "What happened?" Elena asked. Patricia slid a folder across the table. "Morrison's team filed a motion this morning. They're trying to get your military psychiatric records unsealed." Elena's blood went cold. "They can't do that. They're claiming it's relevant to their defense. They want to argue that your combat experience made you prone to violent overreaction, that you have PTSD, that you saw two college kids joking around and your damaged mind turned them into enemy combatants. That's insane. That's their strategy. They can't win on the facts, so they're going to attack your character, make you look unstable, dangerous, a ticking time bomb that finally went off in that diner." Elena felt sick. Her psychiatric records, the sessions after her second deployment, the nightmares she'd finally gotten under control, the grief counseling after Daniel's death. All of it dragged into public view, twisted into something ugly. "Can they do this?" she asked. Patricia's expression was hard. "They can try. We'll fight it. But Elena, you need to understand something. This is going to get ugly. They're not just trying to win the case. They're trying to destroy you." Marcus pushed off the wall. "So we destroy them first." Everyone turned to look at him. "The forensic accountant," Marcus said. "The journalist. The evidence of Morrison's corruption. Why are we waiting? Put it out there. Let the whole town see what he really is." Patricia shook her head. "We can't. Not yet. If we release that information before the trial, Morrison's lawyers will claim we're trying to prejudice the jury. They'll get a mistrial. Maybe even get the charges against Elena increased. So we just let them tear her apart. We let them overreach. We let them get confident. And then when they least expect it, we hit them with everything we have." Marcus looked at Elena. "You okay with that being their punching bag for the next few weeks?" Elena thought about it. Thought about Daniel. Thought about every Marine she'd ever saved. Thought about Marcus lying on that diner floor while two rich kids laughed at him. "I've taken worse hits," she said. "I can take this." Patricia nodded. "Good. Because it's about to get a lot worse." She wasn't wrong. 2 days later, the local news ran a story. Combat nurse or combat threat questions arise about diner attack suspect. Elena watched it in her apartment alone as a reporter she'd never met discussed her troubled military history and history of aggressive behavior. They interviewed a psychology expert who explained how combat veterans often struggle to distinguish between real threats and perceived ones. They showed a photo of Tyler Morrison in his hospital bed, his shoulder in a sling, looking like a wounded puppy, instead of the smirking bully he'd been in that diner. They did not show the security footage. They did not interview Marcus. They did not mention that Elena had a Silver Star for saving 5 Marines under enemy fire. Her phone rang. Marcus. "You watching this garbage?" "Yeah." "It's lies, all of it. They're twisting everything." "I know. We have to do something. We have to tell your side." "Patricia says no media until the trial. We can't risk it." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then, "This isn't right, Elena. None of this is right." "No, it isn't. But we play the long game. We trust the plan." "What if the plan doesn't work?" Elena looked at the TV, where the reporter was now interviewing Richard Morrison outside his office, looking concerned and fatherly as he talked about his traumatized sons. "Then we make a new plan," she said. "But we don't quit. We never quit." She hung up, stared at the screen, and made a decision. The next morning, Elena went to the hospital. Not to work. She was still suspended. But there was someone she needed to see. Linda Chen had been an ICU nurse at County General for 32 years. She'd trained Elena, mentored her, been the closest thing to a mother figure Elena had since her own mother passed away 5 years ago. Linda was working the day shift. Elena waited until her break, then caught her in the cafeteria. "Elena." Linda's face lit up, then clouded with concern. "You shouldn't be here. If administration sees you—" "I know, I just needed to talk to someone." They sat in a corner booth away from prying eyes. "How are you holding up?" Linda asked. "I'm scared," Elena admitted. "Not of the trial. I can handle that. But the things they're saying about me, the way they're twisting everything, I feel like I'm watching someone else's life fall apart. Someone who isn't me." Linda reached across the table and took her hand. "Listen to me. I've known you for 4 years. I've seen you hold a dying man's hand at 3 in the morning because his family couldn't get there in time. I've seen you work double shifts during the pandemic when half the staff was too scared to show up. I've seen who you are when no one's watching." Her grip tightened. "You are not what they're saying. You are not broken. You are not dangerous. You are one of the best nurses I've ever worked with, and one of the best people I've ever known. Don't let them make you forget that." Elena felt tears building. What if they win? What if the jury believes them? Then you appeal, you fight, you keep going, because that's what you do. That's who you are. Linda smiled. "You survived 2 wars, Elena. You can survive this." Elena wiped her eyes. "I don't know how to thank you." "Win. That's how you thank me. Win this thing, come back to work, and buy me a cup of coffee that doesn't taste like hospital sewage." Elena laughed. Actually laughed. For the first time in weeks. "Deal," since she left the hospital feeling something she hadn't felt since the arrest. Hope. But hope has a way of attracting enemies. Elena was unlocking her car when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned. Derek Morrison was standing 10 feet away. His wrist was still wrapped. His face was a mask of barely contained rage. "You ruined everything," he said. Elena's hand instinctively moved to her keys, positioning them between her fingers. Old habit. Military training. "You need to leave. Do you have any idea what you've done to my family? The embarrassment my father won't even look at me anymore. Says we made him look weak. Your father should have raised you better." Derek took a step closer. "You think you're tough. You think because you were in the military you can do whatever you want. But you're nothing. You're trash. And when this trial is over, you're going to be broke, unemployed, and alone. Is that a threat? It's a promise." Another step. "My father always gets what he wants. Always. And what he wants right now is to watch you burn." Elena didn't back up. Didn't flinch. "Tell your father something for me. Tell him I've met men like him before. In Afghanistan. In Iraq. Little men with big power who thought they could do whatever they wanted." She stepped toward him. Derek actually flinched. "You know what happened to them?" She was in his space now, close enough to smell his expensive cologne. "They lost. Every single one of them. Because there's always someone willing to stand up. Someone who isn't afraid. Someone who knows that bullies only win when good people stay silent." She smiled. "I'm not staying silent, Derek. And neither is anyone else. Not anymore." Derek's face was pale. His hands were shaking. "You're going to regret this," he whispered. "Probably. But not as much as you're going to regret pushing that Marine to the ground." She turned her back on him, unlocked her car, got in. Derek stood there frozen, watching her drive away. His phone rang. His father's number. "Derek, where are you? The lawyers need to prep you for the trial." "Dad, I just saw her. The nurse, she..." "What did you do?" "Nothing. I wanted to scare her." Silence on the other end. The kind of silence that was worse than screaming. "Get home. Now. And Derek, if you've done anything to jeopardize this case, I swear to God." The line went dead. Derek looked at his phone. For the first time in his life, he wondered if his father could actually protect him from what was coming. Patricia found out about the confrontation that night. Elena was expecting anger. What she got was a grim smile. "He approached you alone in the hospital parking lot." "Yes. Why are you smiling?" "Because he just violated the restraining order his father filed against you. And because..." Patricia held up her phone. "The hospital parking lot has security cameras. I've already requested the footage." Elena stared at her. "You knew this would happen." "I suspected. Rich boys like Derek don't handle humiliation well. I figured he'd do something stupid eventually. I just didn't think it would be this fast." "What does this mean for the trial?" "It means we have evidence that the Morrison family is engaging in witness intimidation. It means we can file a motion for sanctions. It means the judge is going to take a very different view of who the real aggressors are in this case." Patricia put her hand on Elena's shoulder. "You did good, Elena. You kept your cool. You didn't give him anything he could use." "I wanted to hit him. But you didn't. That's what matters." Patricia's smile sharpened. "And when this footage gets played in court, the jury is going to see exactly what kind of family the Morrisons really are." 1 week before the trial, the forensic accountant finished his analysis. Marcus was the first to see it. He called Elena immediately. "You need to get to the VA, now!" "What is it?" "Just come. You need to see this for yourself." 20 minutes later, Elena was standing in the conference room, looking at a whiteboard covered with names, dates, and numbers. "Richard Morrison has been bribing officials in this county for 19 years, the accountant explained. His name was David Park, former IRS investigator. The kind of man who got excited about financial irregularities the way other people got excited about sports. We're talking judges, police captains, city council members, shell companies funneling money through fake construction projects. It's textbook corruption, and I can prove every single dollar. Elena looked at the board, at the web of lies and money that Richard Morrison had spun around himself. This is enough to destroy him. It's enough to put him in prison, David corrected. Him and at least a dozen other people. But Patricia's right. We can't use it until the right moment. If we release this before the trial, his lawyers will find a way to suppress it. So, when? Patricia stepped forward. We wait until the prosecution rests their case. Then we start our defense. And when we do, we don't just prove you're innocent. We prove that Richard Morrison is a criminal who's been using his money and power to hurt people for almost 2 decades. She looked at Elena. This isn't just about you anymore, Elena. This is about everyone Morrison has ever stepped on. Every person he's bullied. Every life he's ruined. You're not just fighting for yourself. You're fighting for all of them. The weight of it settled on Elena's shoulders. She thought about the waitress at the diner, the cop who'd arrested her against his better judgment, all the people in this town who'd learned to look the other way because fighting Richard Morrison was too dangerous. I'm ready, she said. Patricia nodded. Good, because trial starts Monday, and once we walk into that courtroom, there's no turning back. The night before the trial, Elena couldn't sleep. She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, running through every possible outcome. Conviction. Acquittal. Mistrial. Prison. Freedom. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Can't sleep either. You okay? Define okay. Fair enough. You remember what I told you in the diner, after you took down those 2 idiots? You asked if I was Navy, and you said corpsman, FMF, and I said Semper Fi. I remember. That wasn't just words, Elena. That was a promise. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever happens in that courtroom, you're not alone. You've got a whole battalion behind you. They're flying in from all over the country. They're going to fill that courtroom with dress blues, and they're going to show Richard Morrison what it means to mess with one of ours. Elena felt tears on her cheeks. I don't deserve this. That's where you're wrong. You stood up when everyone else looked away. You protected a brother when it would have been easier to walk past. That's exactly what you deserve. Honor. Loyalty. Family. What if we lose? Then we appeal. We fight. We keep going. Marines don't quit. And neither do corpsmen. Elena wiped her eyes. Thank you, Marcus. For everything. Save it for after we win. Then you can buy me a beer. Deal. She put down her phone, touched the dog tags around her neck. Wish me luck, Daniel, she whispered to the darkness. Tomorrow we fight. Somewhere out there in cities and towns across America, 52 Marines were packing their dress blues, booking early morning flights, and preparing to descend on a small-town courthouse for a woman most of them had never met. Because that's what family does. That's what Marines do. And tomorrow, Richard Morrison was going to learn that lesson the hard way. Elena arrived at the courthouse at 7:30 in the morning. The trial didn't start until 9, but she couldn't stay in her apartment any longer. The walls had been closing in since dawn. Better to face whatever was coming than to sit alone with her thoughts. Patricia was already there reviewing notes in a small conference room reserved for the defense. She looked up when Elena entered. You look terrible. Thanks. Didn't sleep. Neither did I. Patricia pushed a cup of coffee across the table. Drink this. It's going to be a long day. Elena took the cup. Her hands were steady, which surprised her. She'd expected them to shake. How are we looking? Prosecution is confident. They think they've got this wrapped up. Tyler's going to testify first. Then Derek. Then a parade of character witnesses talking about what wonderful boys they are. And our side. Patricia smiled. That sharp, predatory smile Elena had come to recognize. We've got a few surprises planned. The door opened. Marcus Cole entered on his crutches wearing his dress uniform for the first time since Elena had met him. The medals on his chest caught the light. Bronze Star. Purple Heart. Combat Action Ribbon. Morning, he said. Elena stared at him. You didn't tell me you were wearing that. Thought it might help. Remind the jury who they're actually dealing with. It might also remind them that you're biased in my favor. Marcus shrugged. I am biased in your favor. You saved me from getting my head kicked in by two rich punks. That tends to create bias. Patricia stood. We should head to the courtroom. I want to see their faces when they realize what's waiting for them. What do you mean? Patricia just smiled. The courtroom was already filling when they arrived. Elena walked through the doors expecting to see the usual crowd. Reporters, curious locals, Richard Morrison and his army of expensive lawyers. She was not expecting 52 United States Marines in dress blue uniforms. They filled the gallery. Every seat. And when the seats ran out, they lined the walls. Standing at attention. Silent. Faces forward. Elena stopped in her tracks. Marcus put a hand on her shoulder. I told you. You're not alone. She couldn't speak, could barely breathe. These people had traveled from all over the country, taken time off work, spent money they probably didn't have, all for a woman most of them had never met. An older Marine near the front caught Elena's eye. Vietnam era based on the ribbons on his chest. He gave her a small nod. Nothing more. But it said everything. We're here. We've got your back. Your family. Elena nodded back. Swallowed hard. Walked to the defense table with her head held high. Richard Morrison entered the courtroom 3 minutes before 9. He stopped dead when he saw the Marines. For just a moment, one fraction of a second, something flickered across his face. Uncertainty. Maybe fear. Then it was gone, replaced by that mask of confident superiority he wore like a second skin. He walked to his seat behind the prosecution table, leaned over to whisper something to Thomas Whitfield. Whitfield's face went pale. Good, Elena thought. Let them be scared for once. Judge Margaret Hayes entered at exactly 9 o'clock. She was a small woman in her 60s, with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She'd been on the bench for 23 years. Her reputation was simple fare, but brutal to anyone who wasted her time. She surveyed the courtroom, took in the Marines, raised an eyebrow. Well, she said dryly, it appears we have a full house today. I trust everyone will conduct themselves with appropriate decorum. She looked directly at Richard Morrison when she said it. Prosecution may begin. Jennifer Walsh stood. She was Morrison's hand-picked prosecutor, 46 years old, 20 years of trial experience, a conviction rate that made defense attorneys nervous. She had the look of someone who'd already won. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about violence, unprovoked excessive violence committed by the defendant against two unarmed young men. She pointed at Elena. The defendant is not a hero. She is not a protector. She is a trained killer who used military combat techniques on two teenagers whose only crime was being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Elena kept her face neutral. Patricia had warned her about this. Don't react. Don't give them anything. The evidence will show that Elena Reyes dislocated Tyler Morrison's shoulder with a combat move designed to incapacitate enemy combatants. She sprained Derek Morrison's wrist badly enough to require weeks of physical therapy. All because two young men made some jokes she didn't like. Walsh paused. Let it sink in. The defense will try to make this about something else. They'll try to make you feel sorry for the defendant. They'll wave flags and talk about military service. But don't be distracted. The question before you is simple. Did Elena Reyes assault Tyler and Derek Morrison? The answer based on the evidence is yes. She sat down. Patricia rose slowly. Ladies and gentlemen, everything Ms. Walsh just told you is technically true and completely misleading. She walked toward the jury box. Yes, Elena Reyes used combat techniques because two men, not boys, not teenagers, adult men, grabbed her and attacked her after pushing a disabled Marine veteran to the ground for their own amusement. Patricia pulled out a photograph, showed it to the jury. This is Marcus Cole, 2 tours in Afghanistan. Lost his leg to an IED, saving 3 members of his squad. On the day in question, he walked into a diner to get lunch. That's all, just lunch. Another photograph. This is what Tyler and Derek Morrison did to him. Pushed him to the ground, laughed while he lay there, filmed it on their phones. She set down the photographs. Elena Reyes didn't attack anyone. She defended a brother in arms. She did exactly what she was trained to do, what any decent person would do. She stood up for someone who couldn't stand up for himself. Patricia turned to face the gallery. The wall of Marines. The prosecution wants you to believe Elena Reyes is dangerous. I want you to ask yourself one question: if she's so dangerous, why did 52 United States Marines fly across the country to stand with her? She returned to the defense table. The answer is simple. Because she's one of them, and Marines don't abandon their own. Tyler Morrison took the stand at 10:15. He was wearing a sling. His shoulder had healed weeks ago, but the optics were too valuable to waste. Walsh walked him through his testimony like she was guiding a child through a recital. Tyler, can you tell the jury what happened that day? We were just having lunch, me and my brother. We saw the guy with the crutches come in. I don't know, we thought we'd say hi or something. Be friendly. And what happened? We walked over, made some small talk. I think maybe Derek made a joke. Nothing mean, just, trying to be funny. And then, Tyler's face contorted into a practiced expression of wounded innocence. The guy got upset, started yelling at us. Then, out of nowhere, this woman comes over and just attacks us. I tried to get away, but she grabbed my arm and... He touched his sling. I've never felt pain like that in my life. Walsh nodded sympathetically. Did you push Marcus Cole to the ground? No, absolutely not. He fell. I think maybe he lost his balance or something. But we never touched him. Did your brother grab Elena Reyes? No. He was trying to calm her down. She just... snapped. Walsh turned to Patricia. Your witness. Patricia stood. Tyler, you said you were trying to be friendly. Is that correct? Yes. And the joke your brother made, what was it exactly? Tyler hesitated. I don't remember exactly. You don't remember? Interesting. Let me refresh your memory. Patricia picked up a document. This is the police report from Officer Delgado. In it, 3 witnesses quote your brother as saying, and I quote, "Did you leave your leg in the sand over there?" Does that ring any bells? Tyler's face reddened. I mean, maybe he said something like that. It was just a joke. Just a joke, about a man who lost his leg fighting for this country. It wasn't meant to be mean. Really? Then why were you laughing? Tyler didn't answer. Patricia pulled out another document. Security footage from the diner. Timestamp 4 minutes and 32 seconds. Would you like to see it? Walsh stood. Objection. The footage is already in evidence. Overruled, Judge Hayes said. The witness may view the footage. Patricia played the video on a screen visible to the jury. There it was, clear as day. Tyler's hand on Marcus's chest. The shove. Marcus falling. Tyler and Derek laughing. Tyler, you testified under oath that you never touched Marcus Cole. Would you like to revise that statement? Tyler looked at his father. Richard Morrison's face was stone. I guess I forgot. Things happened so fast. You forgot pushing a disabled veteran to the ground. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Tyler? Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like that. Tyler's composure cracked. He was in our way. We just wanted him to move. It's not our fault he can't keep his balance. The courtroom went silent. Patricia let the silence stretch. He was in your way, she repeated softly. A Marine who lost his leg defending this country was in your way. So you pushed him. She turned to the jury. No further questions. If you're still with this story, hit subscribe and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Elena needs all of us right now. Derek Morrison's testimony was even worse. He tried to stick to the script, but Patricia had gotten under his skin. Every question made him more defensive, more aggressive. You grabbed Elena Reyes's wrist, didn't you, Derek? I was trying to stop her from attacking my brother. Before or after she'd touched anyone? I don't remember exactly. The security footage shows you grabbing her before she'd made any physical contact with anyone. Would you like to see it? Derek's jaw tightened. She was being aggressive, getting in our faces. Getting in your faces. A woman 5'6", 130 pounds was threatening two men who outweigh her by 60 pounds each. She was crazy. You could see it in her eyes. Did you feel threatened, Derek? Yes. Threatened enough to grab a woman you'd never met. She was going to attack us. She was going to attack you. Before you'd touched her. Before she'd touched you. She was just going to attack two strangers in a diner for no reason. Derek glared at her. You weren't there. You don't know what it was like. You're right. I wasn't there. But the security camera was. And do you know what it shows? Patricia stepped closer to the witness stand. It shows you and your brother harassing a disabled veteran. It shows you pushing him to the ground. It shows Elena Reyes asking you to apologize. And it shows you grabbing her wrist hard enough to leave bruises. She held up a photograph. Elena's wrist purple and black, taken by the police after her arrest. Does this look like someone trying to calm things down, Derek? Derek said nothing. No further questions. The prosecution rested their case at 3:45. Judge Hayes called a 15-minute recess before the defense would begin. Elena sat at the defense table, her heart pounding. Patricia leaned over. You ready? Do I have a choice? Not really, but you're going to do great. Just tell the truth. That's all you have to do. Marcus caught Elena's eye from the gallery, gave her a thumbs up. 52 Marines sat behind him, still silent, still watching. The recess ended. Judge Hayes returned. The defense may call its first witness. Patricia stood. The defense calls Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Chen. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. From the gallery, a woman in her 50s rose. Dress blue uniform, silver oak leaves on her collar, enough ribbons on her chest to tell a story that spanned decades. She walked to the witness stand with the bearing of someone who had commanded troops in combat zones, who had made life and death decisions, while people like Richard Morrison were worrying about profit margins. She was sworn in. Patricia approached. Colonel Chen, can you tell the court your relationship to Elena Reyes? I served as her commanding officer during her second deployment, Afghanistan, 2015. And in that capacity, did you have the opportunity to observe her character and conduct extensively. Hospital Corpsman Reyes was attached to my unit for 9 months. She served with distinction in some of the most dangerous conditions I've witnessed in 28 years of service. Can you describe those conditions? Colonel Chen's voice was steady, factual. The voice of someone who'd testified in military tribunals, congressional hearings, Pentagon briefings. We were operating in Helmand Province during a period of intense Taliban activity. Our unit took casualties almost daily. Corpsman Reyes was responsible for providing medical care in the field, often under direct enemy fire. Can you give the jury a specific example? Colonel Chen paused. Not for effect, for memory. November 14th, 2015. Our convoy hit an IED outside a village called Sangan. The explosion killed 2 Marines instantly. 7 others were wounded, including Corpsman Reyes herself. She looked at Elena. She had shrapnel in her shoulder and her left thigh. She was bleeding, in pain, and she refused evacuation until every wounded Marine had been stabilized. She refused evacuation. She said, and I quote, "Those boys need me more than I need a hospital." She performed emergency surgery on 2 Marines who would have bled out before the medevac arrived. She did this while taking sporadic small arms fire from Taliban fighters who had initiated an ambush timed with the IED. The courtroom was absolutely silent. What happened to those 2 Marines? They survived. They're alive today because Elena Reyes refused to leave them. Patricia let that sink in. Colonel Chen, you've heard the prosecution's characterization of Elena Reyes as a violent, unstable individual. Does that match your experience? Absolutely not. Chen's voice hardened. Elena Reyes is one of the most disciplined, controlled individuals I've ever served with. She's not violent. She's protective. There's a difference. Can you explain that difference? Violent people hurt others for personal satisfaction. Protective people put themselves in harm's way to keep others safe. Elena Reyes has spent her entire career doing the latter, in combat, in hospitals, and apparently in diners where disabled veterans are being attacked by spoiled children who've never faced a consequence in their lives. Walsh jumped up. Objection. The witness is editorializing. Sustained, Judge Hayes said. But she didn't look displeased. Patricia nodded. No further questions. Walsh approached for cross-examination. Colonel Chen, isn't it true that combat veterans often struggle to readjust to civilian life? Some do. Isn't it true that the skills learned in combat can sometimes be applied inappropriately in civilian contexts? It's possible. So isn't it also possible that Elena Reyes, despite her distinguished service record, overreacted in that diner, that her training kicked in when it shouldn't have? Colonel Chen looked at Walsh with the kind of patient contempt that commanders reserve for people who've never been tested. Counselor, I've seen overreaction. I've seen panic. I've seen trained soldiers lose control in combat situations far more stressful than a diner full of civilians. She leaned forward. Elena Reyes didn't overreact. She saw a threat, assessed it correctly, and neutralized it with the minimum force necessary. If she'd wanted to hurt those boys, really hurt them, she could have. She didn't. She controlled the situation and stopped when the threat was neutralized. That's not overreaction. That's discipline. Walsh had no follow-up. No further questions, she said quietly. Colonel Chen returned to her seat. As she passed Elena, she paused, placed a hand on Elena's shoulder, squeezed once. No words. None needed. Then she was gone back to the gallery, back to the wall of Marines who stood ready to testify that Elena Reyes was not what the prosecution claimed. The defense called 6 more character witnesses that afternoon. A Medal of Honor recipient who had served with Elena's brother in Fallujah, a VA nurse who had worked alongside Elena during the pandemic, a former patient whose life Elena had saved in the ICU, Each one painted the same picture. A woman who gave everything to protect others. A woman who had never sought recognition. A woman who stood up when everyone else looked away. By 5 o'clock, Judge Hayes called an end to the day's proceedings. Court will reconvene tomorrow morning at 9. The defendant is released on her own recognizance until that time. Elena stood. Her legs were shaking. Patricia put a hand on her arm. You did good today, but tomorrow is when it really counts. What happens tomorrow? Patricia's smile was sharp. Tomorrow you testify. And then we show the jury what Richard Morrison really is. Elena looked across the courtroom. Richard Morrison was staring at her. His face was calm, but his eyes were burning. He knew something was coming. Something he couldn't stop. But he didn't know what. Not yet. Elena held his gaze. Didn't look away. 2 years ago, she'd faced Taliban fighters who wanted her dead. She'd stayed calm, done her job, saved lives. Richard Morrison was not the Taliban, and tomorrow she was going to prove it. Outside the courthouse, the Marines had formed 2 lines, an honor corridor stretching from the courthouse doors to the parking lot. Elena walked between them. Each one rendered a salute as she passed. She didn't salute back. Couldn't. The emotion was too much. But she met each person's eyes, nodded, tried to convey gratitude that exceeded her capacity to express. At the end of the corridor, Marcus was waiting. How do you feel? He asked. Elena looked back at the courthouse, at the Marines, at everything that had happened. Like I'm not fighting alone anymore. Marcus smiled. You never were. He offered his hand. Elena took it, and together they walked into the fading light of evening, knowing that tomorrow would bring the reckoning they'd been waiting for. Elena took the stand at 9:17 in the morning. Her hands were steady as she placed them on the Bible. Her voice was clear as she swore to tell the truth. But inside her heart was pounding so hard she was certain everyone could hear it. Patricia approached slowly. Elena, can you tell the jury what happened on the morning of March 15th? Elena took a breath. I had just finished a 14-hour shift in the ICU. I was exhausted. I stopped at the diner to get breakfast before going home. What happened at the diner? I was eating when I heard a commotion. I looked up and saw 2 young men standing over a man who had fallen to the ground. They were laughing. What did you do? I went to help him. When I got closer, I saw he was a veteran. He had a prosthetic leg. His crutches were scattered across the floor. Elena's voice tightened. I asked if he was hurt. He said no, but I could see it in his eyes. The humiliation, the anger. I've seen that look before. In hospitals, in combat zones. It's the look of someone who's been stripped of their dignity. What happened next? I stood up. I asked the 2 men to apologize. And did they? No, they mocked me. Told me to mind my business. One of them called me sweetheart and told me to go back to emptying bedpans. A murmur rippled through the gallery. What happened after that? One of them grabbed my wrist, hard enough to leave bruises. Patricia held up the photograph again. Elena's wrist purple and swollen. Is this your wrist, Elena? Yes. What did you do when Derek Morrison grabbed you? Elena looked at the jury. I defended myself. I applied a wrist lock to break his grip. When his brother charged at me, I used a joint manipulation technique to stop him. Did you intend to seriously injure either of them? No. I used the minimum force necessary to neutralize the threat. If I had wanted to hurt them, I could have. I didn't. Why not? Elena paused. Because that's not who I am. I've spent my entire adult life protecting people, saving lives. I don't hurt people for fun. I don't hurt people for revenge. I hurt people only when there's no other choice. She looked at Tyler Morrison sitting in the gallery with his fake sling. There was another choice that day. They could have apologized. They could have walked away. They chose not to. And when one of them put his hands on me, I made sure they couldn't hurt anyone else. Patricia nodded. No further questions. Walsh stood for cross-examination. Ms. Reyes, you said you used the minimum force necessary. Is that correct? Yes. But you dislocated Tyler Morrison's shoulder. That seems like more than minimum force, doesn't it? No. You don't think dislocating someone's shoulder is excessive? Elena's voice was calm. I think charging at someone and trying to tackle them is a threat. I think the appropriate response to that threat is to neutralize it. A dislocated shoulder can be fixed. A head injury from being tackled onto concrete cannot. So you're saying Tyler Morrison was the aggressor? Yes. Even though you approached him, even though you inserted yourself into a situation that didn't involve you. A disabled veteran being pushed to the ground by two able-bodied men involved me the moment I saw it happen. It should have involved everyone in that diner, but no one else moved. So I did. Walsh changed tactics. Ms. Reyes, isn't it true that you have a history of mental health treatment? Patricia stood. Objection. Relevance. Your Honor, the defense has made the defendant's mental state a central issue by claiming she acted rationally. We should be allowed to explore whether that's actually true. Judge Hayes considered. I'll allow limited questioning on this topic. Tread carefully, counselor. Walsh turned back to Elena. You've received treatment for PTSD, haven't you? I've received counseling, like many veterans. Counseling for traumatic stress related to your combat experiences. Yes. So isn't it possible that what happened in that diner triggered a PTSD response, that you saw two young men and your damaged mind turned them into enemy combatants? Elena felt anger rising, pushed it down. No. How can you be sure? Because I know the difference between a Taliban fighter trying to kill me and two spoiled kids who think they can do whatever they want because their daddy is rich. The gallery stirred. A few Marines smiled. Walsh pressed on. You mentioned your brother earlier, Daniel Reyes. He died in combat, correct? Elena's jaw tightened. Yes. And you wear his dog tags. Every day. Yes. Isn't it possible that seeing a Marine being attacked triggered memories of your brother, that you weren't defending Marcus Cole at all, but reliving some trauma from your past? Elena stared at Walsh. You want to know what I was thinking when I saw Marcus Cole on that floor? Please. I was thinking that my brother died, so people like him could live free. I was thinking that Daniel gave everything his whole life, so that Americans wouldn't have to kneel to bullies. I was thinking that if I walked away from that diner without doing anything, I'd be spitting on everything he sacrificed. Her voice cracked. So, yes, counselor, I thought about my brother, and he's the reason I stood up. Not because I'm damaged, because I was raised to believe that protecting the vulnerable is not optional. It's sacred. The courtroom was silent. Walsh had nothing to say. No further questions. If you believe Elena deserves justice, hit subscribe. This trial isn't over yet. Patricia stood for redirect. Elena, one more question. If you could go back to that day knowing everything that would happen, the arrest, the trial, the attacks on your character, would you do anything differently? Elena didn't hesitate. No. Why not? Because some things are worth fighting for, even when fighting costs you everything. Patricia turned to the jury. No further questions. Judge Hayes called a 15-minute recess. Elena stepped down from the witness stand. Her legs were shaking. The adrenaline that had carried her through the testimony was crashing. Marcus was waiting at the defense table. "You were incredible," he said quietly. "I don't feel incredible. I feel like I'm going to throw up." "That's how you know you did it right. When it's easy, you're not telling the truth." Patricia approached. "Elena, we're about to play our final card. I need you to trust me." "What card?" Patricia smiled. "The one that's going to end Richard Morrison." Court reconvened. Patricia stood. "Your Honor, the defense would like to call one final witness, Thomas Whitfield." A gasp went through the courtroom. Thomas Whitfield, Richard Morrison's lead attorney, the man who had offered Elena $200,000 to go away. Walsh was on her feet immediately. "Objection, Mr. Whitfield is counsel for the Morrison family. This is highly irregular." "Mr. Whitfield has agreed to testify voluntarily," Patricia said. "He is no longer employed by Morrison and Associates as of 6 o'clock this morning." Another gasp. Richard Morrison's face went white. Judge Hayes looked intrigued. "I'll allow it. Mr. Whitfield, please take the stand." Whitfield walked to the witness box like a man approaching his own execution. His expensive suit looked rumpled. His eyes were hollow. He was sworn in. Patricia approached. "Mr. Whitfield, you were employed by Morrison and Associates until this morning. Is that correct?" "Yes." "And in that capacity you represented Richard Morrison and his family?" "Yes." "Why did you resign?" Whitfield took a deep breath. "Because I couldn't be part of this anymore." "Part of what exactly?" Whitfield looked at Richard Morrison, then at the jury. "For 12 years I've helped Richard Morrison cover up crimes. Bribery, fraud, witness intimidation. I've watched him destroy innocent people because they got in his way. I've helped him do it." The courtroom exploded. Judge Hayes banged her gavel. "Order, I will have order in this courtroom." The noise subsided. Patricia continued. "Mr. Whitfield, are you saying that Richard Morrison has engaged in criminal activity?" "Yes." "Can you be specific?" "He's bribed at least a dozen public officials over the past 19 years. Judges, police captains, city council members. He's used shell companies to funnel money through fake construction projects. He's threatened witnesses, tampered with evidence, and used his influence to make criminal charges against his family disappear." Walsh stood. "Objection. This is completely irrelevant to the charges against the defendant." Patricia turned to the judge. "Your Honor, the defense contends that this prosecution is itself a product of Richard Morrison's corruption. That Elena Reyes was arrested not because she committed a crime, but because she embarrassed a powerful man who is used to getting whatever he wants." Judge Hayes considered. "I'll allow this line of questioning, but you'd better be able to back up these accusations, Counselor." "I can, Your Honor." Patricia turned back to Whitfield. "Mr. Whitfield, do you have evidence to support your claims?" "Yes. I've provided the defense with financial records, emails, and recordings that document 19 years of criminal activity." "Why are you coming forward now?" Whitfield's voice cracked. "Because I have a daughter. She's 16. And when I looked at Elena Reyes on that witness stand, I thought about what I would want someone to do if my daughter was ever in trouble. If she ever needed help, and everyone looked away." He wiped his eyes. "I'm tired of looking away. I'm tired of being part of the problem. Elena Reyes did what I should have done years ago. She stood up. And if I can help her, maybe I can start to make up for all the times I didn't." Patricia nodded. No further questions. Walsh didn't even attempt a cross-examination. "What could she possibly say, no questions?" she said quietly. Whitfield stepped down. As he passed Richard Morrison, he stopped. "I'm sorry, Richard, but this had to end." Morrison said nothing. His face was a mask of barely controlled fury, but his hands were shaking. Patricia stood for closing arguments. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, You've heard testimony from witnesses on both sides. You've seen security footage. You've heard character testimony from distinguished military officers and from Mr. Whitfield, who just sacrificed his career to tell you the truth. She walked toward the jury box. The prosecution wants you to believe that Elena Reyes is a violent criminal. But the evidence tells a different story. The evidence shows a woman who saw injustice and refused to look away. A woman who protected a disabled veteran when no one else would. A woman who used exactly the force necessary to stop a threat, and not 1 ounce more. She turned to face Elena. Elena Reyes has spent her entire life serving others. She's saved lives in combat zones and hospital rooms. She sacrificed her body, her mental health, and her peace of mind so that strangers could live. She turned back to the jury. And what did Tyler and Derek Morrison sacrifice? Nothing. They've never had to. They've lived their entire lives knowing that their father's money would protect them from any consequence. They pushed a disabled veteran to the ground because they thought it was funny, because they knew no one would stop them. Patricia's voice hardened. They were wrong. She walked back to the defense table. Elena Reyes is not a criminal. She's a hero, and the only crime committed in that diner was committed by 2 young men who thought they were untouchable. She looked at Richard Morrison. They were wrong about that too. She sat down. The defense rests. Walsh's closing argument was brief, perfunctory. She knew she'd lost. Everyone in that courtroom knew she'd lost. The jury filed out at 2:47 in the afternoon. Elena sat at the defense table, her hands clasped, her heart pounding. Marcus sat in the gallery behind her. 52 Marines sat behind him. Patricia reached over and squeezed her hand. Whatever happens, you should be proud. You told the truth. You stood your ground. That's all anyone can do. Elena nodded. Couldn't speak. The minutes stretched. 10 minutes. 20. 30. At 3:19, the bailiff emerged. The jury has reached a verdict. Elena's stomach dropped. 32 minutes. That was fast. Was fast good? Was fast bad? The jury filed back in. Elena searched their faces for some sign of what was coming. Nothing. Professional neutrality. Judge Hayes spoke. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman stood. A man in his 60s. Retired teacher. He'd taken meticulous notes throughout the trial. We have your honor. On the charge of assault and battery first count, how does the jury find? The foreman looked at Elena. Not guilty. Elena's breath caught. On the charge of assault and battery second count, how does the jury find not guilty? The courtroom erupted. Not cheers, not applause. Something deeper. A collective exhale. A release of tension that had been building for weeks. The Marines rose to their feet. Not celebrating. Standing at attention. Honoring one of their own. Elena couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't process what had just happened. Patricia was saying something. Marcus was pushing through the gallery toward her. Someone was crying. Maybe Elena herself. Judge Hayes banged her gavel. Order! Order in the court! The noise subsided. Judge Hayes looked at Elena. Ms. Reyes, you are free to go. All charges are dismissed. She paused. And Ms. Reyes, for what it's worth, from someone who's seen too many trials where justice didn't prevail, thank you. Thank you for reminding this court what courage looks like. She stood. Court is adjourned. And just like that, it was over. Richard Morrison was the first one out of the courtroom. He didn't speak to his sons, didn't speak to his lawyers, didn't speak to anyone. He walked out with his head down and his shoulders hunched, looking smaller than Elena had ever seen him. The FBI arrested him in the parking lot. 2 agents. Black suits. Badges displayed. "Richard Morrison, you're under arrest for bribery of public officials, wire fraud, and obstruction of justice. You have the right to remain silent." Elena watched through the courthouse window as they put him in handcuffs. The same handcuffs that had been on her wrists 3 weeks ago. Marcus appeared beside her. "How does it feel?" he asked. Elena watched Richard Morrison being loaded into a federal vehicle. "It feels like justice." Marcus nodded. "It feels like justice because it is justice. And you made it happen. We made it happen. All of us." She turned to face the gallery. 52 Marines were still standing at attention. Waiting. Honoring. Elena walked toward them. She stopped in front of the first Marine, the Vietnam veteran who had nodded at her on the first day of trial. "Thank you," she said, "for being here, for believing in me." The old Marine's eyes were wet. "You don't thank us, Doc. We thank you for reminding us why we served." He saluted. Elena saluted back, and one by one, every Marine in that courtroom followed suit. Outside the courthouse, the afternoon sun was bright and warm. The Marines had formed their honor corridor again, 2 lines stretching from the courthouse doors to the street. Elena walked between them slowly, taking in every face, every salute, every silent acknowledgement of what they'd accomplished together. At the end of the corridor, Patricia Hawkins was waiting. "How do you feel?" Elena thought about it. "Free," she said finally. "I feel free." Patricia smiled. "Good, because you've got a life to get back to. A hospital that wants you back. Patients who need you. And a whole lot of living still to do." She offered her hand. "It was an honor, Elena. Truly." Elena shook it. "The honor was mine." Patricia walked away. The Marines began dispersing, cars starting, phones coming out, normal life resuming. Marcus was the last one standing. "So what now?" he asked. Elena looked at the sky. The sun. The world that suddenly seemed brighter than it had in weeks. "Now I go home. I sleep for about 3 days, and then I go back to work. That's it. That's it. Back to normal. Back to saving lives." Marcus smiled. "Nothing about you is normal, Elena, and that's a good thing." He offered his hand. Elena took it. "Buy you that beer?" she asked. "I thought you'd never ask." They walked away from the courthouse together. Behind them, the last of the Marines were getting into their cars, heading to airports, going home to families and jobs and lives that had been interrupted so they could stand with a sister they'd never met. Elena paused, looked back. "Marcus, yeah. How do I thank them, all of them? They gave up so much to be here." Marcus smiled. "You don't thank them. You live. You serve. You keep being the person who stands up when everyone else looks away. That's how you thank them." Elena nodded, touched the dog tags under her shirt. "I can do that. I know you can." They walked into the fading light, and somewhere in whatever place heroes go when their work is done, Daniel Reyes smiled down at his little sister. She'd kept her promise, she'd protected her own, and she'd won. The beer was cold, and the bar was quiet. Elena and Marcus sat in a corner booth at O'Malley's, a veteran-owned place 3 blocks from the courthouse. The walls were covered with military memorabilia, flags, unit patches, photos of men and women who had served. It felt right. Marcus raised his glass. To justice. Elena clinked her glass against his. To the people who made it happen. They drank in silence for a moment. So what happens to Morrison now? Elena asked. Federal charges, wire fraud, bribery, obstruction. David Park, the forensic accountant, says there's enough evidence to put him away for 20 years minimum. And his sons? Marcus shrugged. No criminal charges. But they're finished in this town. Everyone knows what they did. Everyone knows who they really are. Elena thought about Tyler and Derek. Two young men who had everything handed to them their entire lives, who had never faced a consequence until they picked the wrong target. Do you think they'll change? Honestly, no. People like that rarely do. But at least they'll know that actions have consequences. That's more than they knew before. Elena's phone buzzed. A text from Linda Chen. Hospital board voted. You're reinstated effective immediately. Full back pay. And they want to give you a commendation for community service. Elena stared at the message. What is it? Marcus asked. I got my job back, plus back pay, plus some kind of award. Marcus grinned. Of course you did. The hospital would be insane to let you go. You're probably the best nurse they've ever had. I don't know about that. I do. I saw you in that diner. The way you moved, the way you stayed calm. That's not training. That's character. Elena felt her cheeks warm. Thanks, Marcus. Don't thank me. I'm just telling the truth. They sat in comfortable silence. Outside, the sun was setting. Another day ending. Another chapter closing. What about you? Elena asked. What's next? Marcus looked at his prosthetic leg. Physical therapy, same as always. But maybe something else, too. Like what? I've been thinking about starting a non-profit for disabled veterans. Help them with job training, housing adjustment to civilian life. All the things I struggled with when I came home. That's amazing. It's just an idea right now. But after everything that happened, I realized something. I spent too long feeling sorry for myself, hiding from the world because I was ashamed of what I'd lost. He met Elena's eyes. You showed me something in that diner. You showed me that what matters isn't what you've lost. It's what you do with what you've got left. Elena reached across the table, squeezed his hand. You're going to do great things, Marcus Cole. So, are you Elena Reyes? They finished their drinks as the sunset painted the sky orange and red. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Elena's journey isn't over yet. 3 weeks later, Elena walked back into County General Hospital. Her badge worked. Her locker was still there. Her scrubs were hanging exactly where she'd left them. It felt like coming home. Linda Chen was waiting for her at the nurse's station. Welcome back, stranger. Elena hugged her. Tight. The kind of hug you give someone who stood by you when everyone else walked away. Thank you, Elena whispered, for believing in me. Always. Now get to work. We've got a full ICU and I'm short 3 nurses. Elena laughed. Actually laughed. The sound felt foreign after weeks of tension. Yes, ma'am. She walked into the ICU. The monitors beeped. The ventilators hummed. The familiar sounds of a place where life and death played out every single day. Elena had never felt more grateful to hear them. Her first patient was a 73-year-old man recovering from heart surgery. His name was Harold. He'd been a Marine in Korea. You're the nurse from the news, he said when Elena checked his vitals. I guess I am. My grandson showed me the video, the one from the trial. All those Marines standing up for you. They were incredible. Harold grabbed her hand. His grip was weak, but his eyes were fierce. You did good, young lady. You did real good. That's what Marines do. We take care of our own. Elena felt tears building. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. Just keep doing what you're doing. The world needs more people like you. She squeezed his hand. I will, sir. I promise. The days turned into weeks. Elena fell back into the rhythm of hospital life. 12-hour shifts, impossible decisions, the endless dance between hope and heartbreak. But something was different now. Patients recognized her. Families thanked her for what she'd done in that diner. Other nurses, doctors, even administrators treated her with a new kind of respect. She didn't seek attention. Didn't want it. But she couldn't deny that what happened had changed something. Not just in the hospital. In herself. She no longer felt like she was carrying the weight alone. The Marines who had flown across the country, the veterans who had sent messages of support, Marcus and Patricia, and everyone else who had stood with her, they had shown her something she'd forgotten. She wasn't alone. She never had been. The letter arrived 6 weeks after the trial. Elena found it in her mailbox on a Tuesday evening, tired from a long shift, wanting nothing more than a hot shower and 8 hours of sleep. The return address was the Department of the Navy. Her heart stopped. She opened it with trembling fingers. Dear Hospital Corpsman, 3rd Class Elena Reyes. It is our honor to inform you that you have been selected to receive the Navy and Marine Corps Medal for Heroism, not involving actual conflict with an enemy. This award recognizes your actions on March 15th, when you placed yourself at personal risk to protect a disabled Marine veteran from assault. The ceremony will be held at the Washington Navy Yard on June 15th. Your presence is requested. Semper Fidelis, Admiral James Morrison, Chief of Naval Operations. Elena read it 3 times. The Navy and Marine Corps Medal. The highest non-combat decoration for heroism. For what happened in a diner. Her phone rang. Marcus. Did you get it? Get what? Check your email. Elena pulled up her email. There was a message from an address she didn't recognize. She opened it. It was an invitation. To the same ceremony. Because Marcus Cole was also being recognized. I don't understand, Elena said. You didn't do anything. I was the one who... I made the calls. I rallied the Marines. I testified. We did this together, Elena, and they're honoring both of us. Elena sat down heavily. This was too much. All of it. The trial. The vindication. And now this. I don't deserve this. That's exactly why you do, Marcus said. Heroes never think they deserve recognition. That's what makes them heroes. Elena was quiet for a long moment. Will you be there at the ceremony? I wouldn't miss it for the world. Good, because I don't think I can do this alone. Marcus laughed. Elena, you've never been alone. You just forgot for a while. But you remember now, and that's what matters. The ceremony was held on a perfect June morning. Elena wore her dress whites for the first time in years. They still fit. She'd kept them in the back of her closet, unable to throw them away, never expecting to wear them again. Marcus was already there when she arrived. Dress blues, medals gleaming, standing straighter than she'd ever seen him stand. You look good, she said. So do you. Ready? No. Good. Neither am I. They walked into the ceremony together. The room was filled with uniforms. Navy, Marine Corps, Army, Air Force, veterans from every branch, every era. And in the front row, 52 familiar faces. The Marines from the trial. They had come back. All of them. Elena's breath caught. Colonel Chen stepped forward. They wanted to be here, she said. We all did. You're one of us, Elena. And today, we honor that. The ceremony began. Admiral Morrison spoke about courage, about sacrifice, about the bonds that connect those who serve. Then he called Elena and Marcus forward. Hospital Corpsman 3rd Class Elena Reyes, Corporal Marcus Cole, you are here today because you exemplify the highest traditions of military service, not on a battlefield, not in a combat zone, but in a small-town diner where you proved that the values we learn in uniform don't disappear when we take it off. He pinned the medals on their chests. These medals are symbols, but what they represent is something deeper. Courage. Integrity. The willingness to stand up for what's right, even when it costs you everything. He stepped back. The nation is grateful for your service. We are all grateful for your service. He saluted. Elena and Marcus saluted back, and behind them 52 Marines rose to their feet and rendered their own salutes. The sound of hands hitting brows in unison echoed through the room like a heartbeat. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Elena found herself surrounded by people she'd never met, officers, enlisted, veterans, all of them wanting to shake her hand, to tell her what her story meant to them. She smiled, nodded, said thank you more times than she could count. But what she really wanted was 5 minutes alone. She slipped out onto a balcony, took a deep breath of summer air, touched the medal on her chest, touched Daniel's dog tags underneath. I wish you could see this, she whispered to her brother. I wish you could be here. He is here. Elena turned. An old man stood in the doorway, 70 at least, silver hair, weathered face, the look of someone who had seen too much and survived anyway. I'm sorry. Your brother, Daniel, he's here, in you, in everything you do. Did you know him? The old man nodded. I was his commanding officer. Fallujah, 2006. Elena's heart stopped. I was there when he died, the man continued. He was protecting a family, Iraqi civilians. Insurgents had them pinned down. Daniel ran across open ground to draw fire away from them. He saved 8 people that day, including 3 children. Tears streamed down Elena's face. I never knew the details. They just told me it was quick. It was. He didn't suffer. But he knew what he was doing. He chose to sacrifice himself so others could live. The old man stepped closer. When I heard your story, when I saw what you did in that diner, I knew I had to meet you. Because you're just like him. Same courage, same heart, same willingness to put yourself between danger and the people who need protecting. He reached into his pocket, pulled out something small and metal. Daniel's bronze star, the one that had been awarded posthumously, the one Elena had never been able to find after the funeral. He would have wanted you to have this, the old man said. He would have been proud of you, Elena. So proud. Elena took the medal, held it against her chest. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for telling me. The old man smiled. Semper fi Corpsman. Your brother is watching, and he's smiling. He walked away. Elena stood alone on the balcony holding her brother's medal, tears streaming down her face. But for the first time in 11 years, the tears weren't just grief. They were gratitude. 3 months later, Elena stood in front of the diner where it had all begun. The same cracked vinyl booths, the same coffee that tasted like history, the same bell above the door. But something was different now. There was a plaque on the wall. Bronze, simple. In honor of Elena Reyes and Marcus Cole. This is where courage stood up, when cowardice looked away. March 15th. Marcus was waiting inside. Same booth where his unit used to sit before deployments. Elena slid in across from him. "You've been busy," she said, nodding at the plaque. "The town council voted unanimously, even the people who supported Morrison. I think they wanted to make amends." "And the non-profit," Marcus grinned. "Officially launched last week. We've already helped 12 veterans find housing. Got another 20 in job training programs. It's small, but it's growing. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of us." Linda the waitress appeared. Same woman who had been there that day, who had called 911, who had told the truth when it mattered. "Coffee, please," Elena said. Linda poured 2 cups, set them down. "You know what I think about sometimes," Linda said. "I think about all those people who were in here that day, 43 of them, and only one person stood up." She looked at Elena. "But now everyone knows the story, and maybe next time more people will stand up. Maybe next time it won't just be one person against the bullies." "Maybe," Elena said. "Not maybe," Marcus said. "Definitely, because that's what stories do. They change people. They remind us who we're supposed to be." Linda smiled. "Coffee's on the house. Forever. Both of you." She walked away. Elena and Marcus sat in comfortable silence, drinking coffee that still tasted like it had been sitting since the Carter administration. It was perfect. "So what now?" Marcus asked. Elena thought about it. She thought about Daniel, about the Marines who had flown across the country, about Patricia and Colonel Chen and everyone else who had fought for her. She thought about the patients she would save tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. She thought about Marcus and his non-profit, about all the veterans they would help together. She thought about the plaque on the wall, about the story that would be told for years to come. "Now," Elena said. "Now we keep going. We keep serving. We keep standing up when everyone else looks away." She raised her coffee cup. "To the fallen, and to those still fighting." Marcus raised his cup. "Semper Fi?" "Semper Fi." They drank. Outside, the sun was shining. Another day beginning. Another chance to make a difference. Elena touched the dog tags under her shirt. Daniel's tags. And now his bronze star, which she wore on a chain beside them. She had started this journey alone. Exhausted. Broken. Barely holding on. She was ending it surrounded by family. Honored. Healed. Stronger than she'd ever been. Not because she had won a trial. Not because she had received medals. Because she had remembered what she was born to do: protect those who need protecting. Stand up when everyone else looks away. Be the person who runs toward danger, instead of away from it. That was who Elena Reyes was. That was who she would always be. And as she sat in that diner drinking coffee with the Marine whose life she had changed, Elena Reyes made one final promise. To her brother, to herself, to everyone who had ever worn a uniform. She would never stop fighting. She would never stop serving. She would never stop being the person who stands up. Because that's what heroes do. Not because they're fearless. Because they're afraid, and they do it anyway. That's the lesson of this story. That's what Elena Reyes taught us all. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision that something else matters more. And for Elena, what mattered was simple. Protecting her own. Always. If this story moved you, subscribe to our channel. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, the next time you see injustice and everyone else looks away, be the one who stands up. Be the one who makes a difference. Be the Elena Reyes in someone's story. Because the world needs more people who refuse to look away. The world needs more people like you, Semper Fi,